All right, good afternoon, everyone. So, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Gloria Lara, and I'm the chair of the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. For those of you that don't know, the commission is an 8-member body created by the 1963 Michigan Constitution. We are the only commission of this type that is enshrined within the state constitution. We are specifically charged with enforcing the civil rights protections against discrimination that Michigan affords to every resident and visitor. The commission is responsible for investigating alleged discrimination against any person because of religion, race, and this also includes hair texture and protective hairstyles, color, national origin, genetic information, sex, including sexual orientation or gender identity, age, marital status, height, weight, arrest record, and physical and mental disability. In addition to housing, we enforce civil rights laws in relation to employment, education, public accommodation, law enforcement, and public service. Today, we are here to engage in a public hearing on fair housing. We convened this event because the department would like to hear testimony from the public about direct discrimination or disparate outcomes experienced during housing-related transactions. That includes buying a house, renting a house or apartment, credit ratings, home loans, or home appraisals. Today is the third of 4 hearings to happen around the state through April of 2024. We convened a hearing in Detroit last November and a virtual hearing in February. Another in-person hearing will happen in Grand Rapids. Well, this is an old. So we're having our in-person hearing here in Grand Rapids today, and following that will be the 2024 Civil Rights Summit on Housing, which is being held on June 12th in Detroit. The department will use this testimony to create a report of recommendations for addressing fair housing issues. The testimony gathered at all of these hearings will also include the topics of discussion at the Civil Rights Summit this June. In order to get the best recommendations, we would like to hear personal experience, as well as expert testimony on a variety of issues that can impact fair housing. I will now turn things over to have a few housekeeping rules and the protocol for testimony shared.
Good afternoon, Chair Laura, commissioners, and attendees. My name is Patricia Barrera, and I'm the Strategic Initiatives Coordinator for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. A few weeks ago, the department created a flyer and Eventbrite registration form to allow residents to reserve a spot to testify. If you registered via Eventbrite, we already have your name added to our list of people who wish to testify. If you would like to offer testimony but did not register through Eventbrite, you would need to complete a public comment form. Public comment forms can be found at the registration table or from one of our MDCR staff. MDCR staff, please raise your hand if you are holding public comment forms. Our staff will be circulating through the room collecting the completed forms. Chair Lara will call on attendees in the order in which we received their testimony form. Depending on the number of people who wish to testify, the time frame for testimony will be about 5 minutes. When there is 1 minute remaining, the timekeeper will display a yellow sheet of paper and provide a verbal warning. We ask that everyone take this warning seriously and begin to wrap up comments. When your time has expired, the timekeeper will display a red sheet of paper. Please end your testimony when you see the red sheet of paper. Please also be aware that MDCR staff will verbally warn any speakers only once if they use inappropriate, inflammatory, or disrespectful language. If you If use of the language continues, the speaker will be asked to stop commenting. That completes the public comment protocol. Chair Laura, I turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you. Please remember that we are here to listen and accept testimony. We are not here for extended discussion or debate, only to listen. We may ask questions to clarify our understanding of the testimony. This event is being recorded, and department staff will review that testimony as evidence toward creating recommendations for improving fair housing in Michigan. And we'll just... While there are many issues facing the people of Grand Rapids and Western Michigan, this public hearing is solely concerned with housing discrimination. The Commission is conducting this hearing in order to learn about the experiences of people in Grand Rapids and West Michigan who have faced housing discrimination and what we can learn from these experiences. From time to time, a commissioner may ask a clarifying question, but commissioners generally will not comment on the testimony. Our purpose in holding this and other public hearings around Michigan is to hear about incidents of housing discrimination faced by real Michigan families, and to carry that information into our 2024 Civil Rights Summit on June 12th in Detroit. At the summit, your stories will help us develop policies and legislative proposals to eliminate discrimination in buying, renting, selling, and financing a home. And at this time, I would like my fellow commissioners to just briefly introduce themselves, just their name and where they're from. Roseanne, can...
My name is Roseanne Barker, and I'm from Detroit, Michigan.
Regina Gasco, Petoskey, Michigan.
Zina Al-Hassan, Dearborn.
Director? You.
I'm John Johnson. I'm director of the department.
Great, thank you. Lamont?
Lamont Satcher, General Counsel for the Department of Legal Advisor for the Commission from Detroit.
And as being introduced, I'm Gloria Lara, and I live in Walker, Michigan, which is just about a mile north of the Grand Rapids city line. So this public hearing will end at 7 p.m. So we will take our last testimony a few minutes before that time. There will be a break halfway through. Also, as a reminder, we will not be discussing individual cases tonight. If you have a question about a current or pending investigation, I will ask you to stop to protect the integrity of the department's investigation. We have MDCR staff out towards the opening that can answer general questions about the department. With that, we will call the first person. Gail Harvey.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing us to be here. This subject is near and dear. So I am Gail Harvey. I am the housing chair for the Michigan State Conference with the NAACP. I also own a corporate relocation company and am a licensed real estate agent. I'd like to start by saying I work with people in all states when it comes to housing. There's a constant issue with housing and availability for specific types of loans when it comes to homes and condos. I'm going to give you a couple of these, but while we do only have a certain amount of time, because of what I do, I have many, many stories, and they are all personal. I want to start with the condo list. There's a condo list of approved condos. I work with a lot of single parents, first-time home buyers who want safe and adequate dwelling and would like to purchase these places. However, the percentage of the associations who accept FHA, which is a type of loan in Kent County, is in the single percentage digit. And when it comes to the preferred zip codes for people in a range of roughly $200,000 or less. FHA loans have a smaller credit availability. They work with smaller amounts down. They are privy to programs which can cover their down payments and closing costs. And this is awesome for a buyer, but it is also a way to keep them out of certain areas. While there are associations in preferred areas, they do not accept FHA loans as a purchase. A loan should not be a requirement of where you live and what community you want to purchase in. A loan is specific to your income and your credit availability or ability to get that loan. There's also an apartment shortage in affordable dwellings. At times, people may need to lease instead of purchase. Different areas, depending on the city's future projections, start pricing the low to middle income tenant right out of the market for leasing. This makes it harder for them to secure safe dwelling. While there may be tiny homes and new small houses popping up in certain targeted areas, it is unfair to guide people specifically to those homes in those areas. Why are these living opportunities not being offered in all areas and in and around the city with the same affordability target? Why are we targeting income guidelines for placement? This is already unfair to people of a certain economic standing. We should not have to target. There should be something in place that can open up a dialogue so that people have the ability to dwell in and around the city without being placed there. There's a list of cities that are the best cities to live in when it comes to the different states. And in our area, our top is Ann Arbor, Michigan. And this is according to Rocket Mortgage, who does mortgages everywhere. And with that, Ann Arbor, the median is $384,000 for a home. And their average household is roughly $70,000. However, they do have the most wealthy alumni, and they are able to afford these homes with no credit issues. Grand Rapids, our median, according to our data USA, is $55,000. However, in Grand Rapids, the average salary is $37,000. That's $17.81 an hour. That's well below the poverty level. Per the article in Redfin, Grand Rapids is a good place to be. However, you need to be within those guidelines in order to afford it. There are so many wrongs with the homeless, and no one wants to address the root of the problem. You gotta start at the root. You can't start up at the top. With that being said, we would like to have more discussion on this, and I do appreciate that you allowed me to speak on behalf of us.
Thank you. So I'm going to start calling people as well who may not be here, but just in case they didn't check in, I will still call their names. And if I mispronounce your name, please excuse me. Jaisi Daniels. Sainia Gant Jordan. Nancy Haynes.
Good afternoon. My name is Nancy Haynes, and I'm the Executive Director of the Fair Housing Center of West Michigan. Our mission is to prevent and eliminate housing discrimination, ensure equal housing opportunity, and promote inclusive communities. We achieve this objective through education, outreach, research, advocacy, and enforcement. I'm going to give an overview of our services, and I've got a couple of colleagues here who will give more specifics as well. And we, too, welcome further discussion. We try to accomplish our mission through both education and outreach, as well as enforcement. We try to lead with a handshake. We have a unique history. We started as a partnership between the Grand Rapids Association of Realtors and the Grand Rapids Public Schools and advocates and neighborhood associations. In Grand Rapids, they were trying to figure out how best to integrate schools. And they determined the best way to integrate schools wasn't busing, because that's temporary, but it was better to actually integrate neighborhoods. And that's more permanent. So because of that, we have a really committed community. We have a great partnership with realtors. I have realtors on my board. I have bankers on my board. I have attorneys and advocates. And we come together to try to figure out the best way to tackle housing discrimination. So we also engage in enforcement. Unfortunately, education and outreach doesn't always work. So we use whatever tools we can to further that enforcement. That includes interviews, testing, data analysis, and we do systemic investigations, not just complaint-based. So if someone calls us, we'll investigate their housing discrimination if they're alleging housing discrimination. But if not, we can also initiate our own investigations based on things that we see in the news, concerns we have, our own data analysis. We do this on the basis of all the federal, state, and local protected classes. So in Grand Rapids, the city of Grand Rapids, we have source of income protection. We're hoping that criminal history will be added at the state level. We also have marital status at the state level. And we have age at the state level, and then we have all the federally protected classes. We've been doing this work, and only this work, since 1980. We just focus on housing discrimination. We have a staff of 10 people. We cover 38 counties, or try to the best of our ability. We have a combination of funding. We get some MSHDA funding, which has been great. That's new in the past 3 years. We also have CDBG contracts, Community Development Block Grant contracts, and we have HUD funding. We also raise funding through events like the event that we had, the Fair Housing event that we had last week, 2 weeks ago, and MDCR was a great partner in that, and we thank you for that partnership. So last year, I'm just going to give kind of an overview of what we did last year and how we tried to get at housing discrimination. Through our education and outreach efforts in 2023, 3,152 people received fair housing training during 135 different sessions. 1,732 were housing professionals, and 1,420 were housing home seekers. So there's a huge demand for our services. We provided over 26,000 educational materials, and 266,834 received our education and outreach services last year. We also have some high school programming. It's a 10-week course. We go in once a week. We partner with the Diatribe, and we talk about civil rights and the importance of community and finding your voice and using your voice in a creative way. That's called Writing to Right Wrongs. On the enforcement side, we received over 1,500 fair housing-related contacts last year. We spend a good deal of time talking with each individual to try to figure out if it's housing discrimination or something else. We're committed that if we're not the right call, the next call you make will be the right call. Last year, we opened up 140 different fair housing cases in 42 different municipalities. 51% were based upon disability, 31% were based upon race, and 11% on familial status. And then the other 7% were scattered between national origin, LGBTQ, source of income, et cetera. We helped over 77 people obtain reasonable accommodations or reasonable modifications. Disability status remains our #1 complaint base. It takes a lot of time. We also do things like reports, and I'm running out of time, so I just want to briefly touch on this. I brought a deep analysis that we did on the lending in Kent County, on the lending landscape. And some of the top line findings, I'll leave these copies with you, but The gap between white homeownership and black homeownership since 1970 has doubled. 2 more things. 11.3%, well, despite our county having 10.7% black population, only 4.4% of mortgage originations went to black home buyers. And 11.3% of our population is Hispanic, only 5.8%. The city's neighborhoods of color lost 78% of their bank branches since 2000, 78%. Only 2 remain in our black neighborhoods. The city of Grand Rapids as a whole lost 36%, and our suburbs lost only 6%. So I'll be happy to talk more about this if you want a special presentation on our lending report, but I'll leave these copies. I'll give them to Patty to give to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Next is Dorian Slaybod.
Chair Lara, Commission, thanks for having this meeting. Madam Timekeeper, can you tell me when to go? Good to go? So I'm here, I work with Farmworker Legal Services. I'm a staff attorney there. We represent farmworkers throughout Michigan, so folks who work in the agricultural industry. We're based in Kalamazoo. I also serve on the Housing Subcommittee, on the Interagency Migrant Services Committee, and I served on the MDARD Migrant Labor Housing Advisory Board. So I know housing is a problem for folks all across the state. I wanted to highlight just a couple of issues that farmworkers face here in Michigan so you can be aware moving forward. Farmworkers, it's about 70,000 folks who work in the agricultural industry as laborers and workers. When you include families, about 94,000 folks. This is based off the latest estimates. These are people who come from Michigan, right? People live in Michigan year-round and have permanent, stable housing, but there's also a lot of folks who rely on seasonal housing, temporary housing, who travel to Michigan from other states like Texas, Florida, North Carolina, or other countries to the H-2A visa program like Mexico, Guatemala, South Africa. And so one of the important takeaways is that housing is directly related to their job. Their job is contingent on housing many times. And what we have seen, and the couple of issues I wanted to talk to you about today, is that we see familial and marital discrimination against farm workers here in Michigan. This happens both in law and in fact, and I want to talk to you a bit about both. This happens in law primarily at the local ordinance level. We see provisions, for example, that say that this housing is only for workers. Nobody but workers can live in this housing. So farm workers who have a family, who have children, are faced with the decision of whether to take this job in a remote rural area and leave their family behind, or not take it at all. There are also provisions in local ordinances that we have seen, and the Michigan Department of Civil Rights has seen and intervened on in the recent past, that create lesser housing for farm workers. Certain provisions that seem innocuous on its face, such as setback provisions, where farm worker housing has to be 500 feet from the road, but that creates all kinds of problems. It makes it an issue for emergency services to arrive, makes it an issue just to get your mail off the road, it makes it more difficult just to be seen and be a part of a community. Now, I know farm workers are not a protected class per se, but these are folks who are primarily Latinx, primarily Spanish-speaking, primarily people of color, and primarily seen as other. And when you see these provisions in local ordinances, coded language is used. We also see provisions that try to prevent farm worker housing from happening altogether. And coded language could be too many single men in one place. Or it could, some of the testimony that we have heard talks about just trying to preserve the community. And that's great if you want to build this housing, but we want it separate. And so you're not going to see explicit discrimination in these issues. It's going to be coded language, and I'm sure you've seen this in other areas. We also see discrimination in impact, primarily with female agricultural workers. Now, there are plenty of women who work in agriculture in Michigan, but we have seen, and people have told us about, that they have been prevented from taking jobs, primarily, again, as women, who have children at home, who go to apply for a job, and they don't see housing available that has family accommodations. or they don't see other women working in these jobs. And again, employment and housing are inherently connected in the farm worker context here in Michigan. And so, you know, what I want you to take away is that, thank you. Zoning primarily happens at the local level, and the vast majority of local zoning commissions don't have discriminatory intent, don't have discriminatory laws on their books, but that makes it even more difficult to see when they pop up. And oftentimes it's connected into a smattering of other provisions that are innocuous on their face and do not discriminate, which makes it even more difficult to untether those and see the real impact, right? And that's what the impact is here, right? Farm workers, who are, again, oftentimes members of protected classes, are faced with a decision where they have to choose between taking a job or living with their family. And there are plenty of folks who choose to come to Michigan and leave their family in another state, in another part of Michigan, in another country, and work here in Michigan in their agricultural industry. But that should be their decision to leave family behind, and it should not be a reality or a law that farm workers have to choose between working here in the agriculture industry in Michigan or being with their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Esther Fifelsky. Starlet Alexander. Amanda Pierce. Matthias Martinez. Autumn Goodman. Liz Keegan.
Good afternoon. April is Fair Housing Month, so I apologize, I've lost my voice a little bit. I am the Director of Education and Outreach for the Fair Housing Center of West Michigan. Please let me know if you can't understand me. I'm going to try to speak quickly but clearly because I do have a lot that I want to share. Thank you so much to the Commission and MDCR for hosting this important series of hearings and also for the opportunity to speak today. I want to acknowledge and sincerely thank the many Michigan Department of Civil Rights staff that we have partnered with over the years to provide education outreach, including earlier this month, doing trainings, events, and educational campaigns, among many other endeavors. Our education programs and resources seek to build awareness of what fair housing is, its limitations, its importance to our community. We train professionals in the industry on laws and fair practices. We train community members on their fair housing rights. We provide key guidance to government officials and lawmakers. We connect with community agencies so they can apply fair housing in their work. We believe that there is no audience that doesn't have a stake in fair housing, and that includes all of us here today, so thank you all for coming. We all have fair housing rights, and we are all protected simply in being who we are. That means that pretty much everyone should know fair housing, and that is a daunting and yet crucial task, especially since so many struggle to find housing in good repair that's affordable, accessible, let alone housing that they should be able to freely choose. There has been and continues to be a growing huge demand for fair housing education and outreach, and specifically trainings and presentations, as well as just being out in the community as much as we possibly can. Much of the demand does come from the rental market, where there can be a lot of staff turnover and changes in ownership and management, as well as on the sales and industry side of that. Many of the training attendees that we have are seeking annual training at a minimum and often want specialized topics, private trainings, et cetera. As you may know, some of you, there's no requirement for rental housing professionals to have any fair housing training or knowledge unless their employer chooses to require it, even though it's always recommended as a best practice, and we see it in many case settlements as it should be. Just over half of our cases each year are from a difference in treatment and rental processes, so that's really an important thing for us to focus on to try to tackle. Rental housing turns over more often, so it's a critical area to focus on for fair housing efforts. There's also a new law in Michigan that's requiring real estate professionals in Michigan who are licensed to have 1 hour of fair housing training per year. That just went into effect in February. Another reason why I think I've lost my voice. It's a significant increase. It's a great benefit to have more education out there. We've tried so much to meet the demand. In the past 14 years, we've provided well over 900 compliance trainings to over 19,000 professionals. In the last 5 years alone, we've reached out to 3,800 community members with targeted fair housing rights information in trainings. This doesn't count all of the other work that we're doing with events and campaigns and materials. Each training typically results in more work, which is a good outcome if we can keep up, and unfortunately, we're being high-pressed to keep up. We also provide hundreds of hours of technical assistance to professionals, nonprofits, disability advocates, social service agencies, and so much more. Fair housing laws can leave gray areas for people trying to comply or understand their rights, so we really try to make ourselves available to help explain that while not being attorneys and not having attorneys on staff. We officially cover those 38 counties that Nancy mentioned, but additionally, we try to cover at least 21 more Michigan counties because other fair housing centers don't provide industry training like we do. That's an important part of our unique history in the fair housing movement, and I think it's a really important thing to help prevent prevent housing discrimination from happening. Trainings, which include the ones that we do in partnership with MDCR staff, which are very popular, by the way, draw attendance now not only from across the state, the region, and now occasionally across the country. With this demand, it makes it hard to provide other targeted trainings, and we've had to start saying no, which is the absolute last thing. We do not want to be in that position, but we're finding ourselves there. We're grateful to have special grants to work together with MDCR. We're working on special grants from HUD right now to talk about fair housing and housing development, which I think a lot of people are here because they're concerned about the lack of housing, and we're seeing housing developed, but we want to make sure it's being made available equitably. We also have new legal protections, which Commissioner Lauer talked about, sexual orientation and gender identity. We need to reach out, let people know they are protected, build that trust to get those complaints brought to us. We do all sorts of work with materials. We're trying to solve the problem proactively as best we can. We're unique in the fair housing movement in that we really do that proactive work. We're so thankful for the partnerships that we have, but we're here to just say there's demand for much, much more. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Elizabeth Stoddard.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Stoddard. I'm the Deputy Director of the Fair Housing Center. I have the privilege of working with Liz and Nancy. Thank you for this opportunity to share about housing discrimination and to bring more awareness to the fair housing issues in West Michigan. I have worked at the Fair Housing Center for the last 17 years. Over that time, we have processed over 2,800 unique allegations of housing discrimination. Unfortunately, we have seen a stark increase in allegations over the last 5 years with over 900 new reports of discrimination. These include allegations of discrimination on every single protected class under Michigan's laws, and as well as in every facet of the housing market, including sales, mortgage lending, rental, homeowners insurance, and renters insurance. Part of the work of the Fair Housing Center is identifying and addressing discrimination that may not be otherwise recognized or reported, including systemic discrimination. One way we do that is through in-depth data analysis, like Nancy mentioned in our new report on mortgage lending. Another way we do that is through a disparate impact analysis, or looking at issues that have a discriminatory effect. Discrimination in housing is seldom straightforward. Sometimes discrimination comes in the form of a policy that may seem neutral, but has a devastating effect on communities by disproportionately excluding people who would otherwise qualify for the housing. This could be because of someone's race or disability or because they have children. We receive frequent reports of people being discriminated against because of their criminal history, and while that is not a protected class, there is clear HUD guidance on the on how someone's criminal history can be used in a housing transaction to ensure that they are not a threat to people or property versus policies that are overly restrictive, like blanket bans on felonies and other issues that have a disproportionate effect on people of color. The Fair Housing Center is uniquely situated to investigate and help people prove the discriminatory effect of those kinds of issues. Another way that we find evidence to support allegations of discrimination and identify instances of systemic discrimination is through the use of fair housing testing. Fair housing testing is an investigative tool used to gather evidence. A fair housing tester's role is to observe and document the ordinary business practices of housing providers, mortgage lenders, insurance companies, and others. At the Fair Housing Center, we have completed over 1,400 fair housing tests in the past 5 years, with 30% revealing evidence. This means that 1 in every 3 times that we use fair housing testing to simulate a normal housing transaction in our market, we uncover evidence. Even though testers are volunteers that are not really looking for housing, they can still feel the pain of discrimination in their role as a tester. One of our testers provided a testimonial about their experience feeling discriminated against as a tester. For purposes of keeping our testers anonymous, they're not here today, but I'm going to share their comments with you now. And I quote, "While testing, I have encountered a few instances of discrimination. One of them sticks out vividly to me. I was at an apartment complex in Northeast Grand Rapids, and I was posing as a woman with a husband and a few children. The agent immediately stopped me after I mentioned my children and said that we could not rent there because we had too many kids. She was very dismissive and abrupt and showed me the door. I remember feeling shocked, confused, and speechless. I remember also feeling helpless. I thought, had this actually been me, I was left with no option. Discrimination, in my eyes and from my experience, is the feeling of helplessness. I would not wish that feeling on anyone for any reason." End quote. While we at the Fair Housing Center work every day to try to end discrimination and ensure equal housing opportunity, members of our community still face housing discrimination at unprecedented rates. Our work is not yet done, and in fact, we need to do more now than ever. We look forward to continuing to work with you to make fair housing a reality for all Michiganders.
Thank you. Deshwana Knight. Lisa Tenser.
Good evening, everyone. Chair Lara, Director Johnson, and honorable commissioners. My name is Lisa Tenser. I am a program associate for the Opening Doors Initiative at the Vera Institute of Justice. Vera works to end mass incarceration, protect immigrants' rights, ensure dignity for people behind bars, and build safe, thriving communities. Before my work at Vera, I worked on fair housing investigations at the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. And I'm grateful to be with you today, testifying to the issue of housing discrimination against Michiganders with conviction histories, and in support of the Fair Chance Access to Housing Act, a policy introduced to address this discrimination. In Michigan, more than 2 million people have a conviction or arrest history. With the recent passage of Clean Slate, the state has made tremendous progress towards enabling people to live safe, stable lives, but more must be done. People with conviction or arrest histories still face tremendous barriers to housing, employment, and full participation in our communities. In fact, a 2021 survey conducted by the Michigan State Housing Development Authority found that respondents with conviction histories reported the highest levels of housing discrimination of any group. I want to reiterate this finding. Housing discrimination was most prevalent among those with conviction histories in our state. This finding is devastating and demands further action from the state. These are people who have served their time and rehabilitated themselves as dictated by our society's laws, and yet they struggle to find housing, making them more prone to homelessness and returning to prison, which in turn makes our communities less safe. Additionally, we cannot talk about this issue without addressing racial discrimination. In Michigan, Black people are disproportionately over-arrested and incarcerated. Black people make up only 15% of the state's population, yet they make up 50% of the state's prison population. Discrimination within the criminal legal system carries over into the community as people are released from incarceration and then shut out of housing. Encouragingly, the issue of housing discrimination against people with conviction histories has gained increasing attention from government leaders in recent years. In 2016 and in 2022, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development issued guidance and clarification on how a housing provider's screening of a person's conviction or arrest history could potentially violate the Fair Housing Act under 3 different theories of liability. And earlier this month, HUD released proposed regulations to lower barriers to accessing HUD-subsidized housing for people with conviction histories. The proposed regulations would ensure that public housing authorities and HUD-subsidized housing providers cannot automatically or categorically deny housing assistance to an applicant simply due to a recorded conviction. It additionally proposes that these housing providers can only consider conviction histories that are relevant to the health and safety of other residents and staff, that they must use individualized assessments to determine whether an applicant presents a prospective risk to individuals or property, and that a look-back period, which is the period of time in which a housing provider can consider an applicant's past record, should be established. HUD specifically states that a look-back period longer than 3 years following criminal activity is unreasonable. If enacted, these proposed regulations will have a significant impact on communities throughout the country, and they provide a useful template to additionally address housing discrimination in the private housing market at the state level. HUD's proposed regulations mirror provisions within the Fair Chance Access to Housing Act, House Bill 4878, introduced by Representative Abraham Ayash this session. The Fair Chance Access to Housing Act addresses the urgent issue of housing discrimination against those with conviction histories in Michigan and will help ensure the stability of communities across the state. I respectfully ask the Commission to support this legislation and other programs to address this issue. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify today. I appreciate your time and dedication to these issues. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Nancy Harrison.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nancy Harrison, and I live in an independent apartment. I've been there for 9 years, and I live here in the Grand Rapids area. I moved into the apartment 2 years ago, just before COVID had happened. And there will be people knocking on my door, but I don't have a flashing light to bring the awareness that they're there. And I requested one from the manager of the apartment, and he will not get that for me in my apartment. And that to me is discrimination, because I am not able to have a flashing doorbell to be aware that someone is in my home. And it's been very frustrating. I'm very tired of it. I've been complaining about this to the apartment manager. And as a deaf person, it's important for me to have that as accommodation. For UPS, for Amazon, and for other companies that drop things off at my door, really, I just don't understand that they're there, and it's discrimination. So it's been very tough. So that's all I've been asking for, is to just have, a Ring doorbell and to have an accommodation for a fire alarm as well. Those are the two requirements, and it's very serious that we have those in our apartments, but I don't. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Testing, testing.
Tanya Powell May. Dolores Osby. Michaela Thompson. Robert Eggleston.
Hello, my name's Robert Eggleston. I want to thank you all for being here today and making it so I can tell my testimony. I live in a mobile home park in northern Kent County. I live with my 86-year-old mother who's handicapped. And she's never been diagnosed with it, but most definitely she has dementia or Alzheimer's disease. In November of last year, we received an eviction notice because I have a felony that's from 1992. It is a criminal sexual conduct felony, but I did 8.5 years for it. I have been in trouble a couple of times since then with a marijuana felony and a child support felony. That I've since paid off $40,000 in child support. But like I say, now they're trying to evict my mom and me. I'm her caregiver. I have been. We've lived in the park for 13 years. The people that own it now have owned it for 4 years. And they've come in and disrupted a lot of people's lives. I believe it's not just me that they're discriminating against, but they're also discriminating against a lot of other people in there, I know for a fact. But it's hard enough to take care of your parent in this with what she's got, but it's really hard to try to explain to her that we may have to move out of the house that she's owned, and I've put probably $50,000 in the last 7 or 8 years because of something I'd done 30 years ago. It's pretty tough. And just like she says, you've done your time. It's time that they get off your back and let you go. But really, it's not me that I'm here for. It's really for my mother. She's all I've got. I have nothing else. And I hope and pray that somebody can help me. That's all I ask, I have done some research, and I've seen where handicapped people do have a few more rights than others, and because of the handicap. And I have a lawyer from the Fair Housing Commission, or I don't know if he's from the Fair Housing Commission. He's from Fair Housing in Kent County Legal Aid. That I really don't think he's doing me any good, but that's what I have to do. What I have to go for. I don't have no other way to go. So. But I thank you for your time, and again, I just hope and pray that something can be done about this. I don't think it's right, and again, I just pray that somebody can maybe help me and maybe lead me in the right direction. So I thank you.
Thank you. I have one quick question. Did you say you own the mobile home?
Yes, we own the mobile home. We rent the lot.
Okay, and you rent the lot?
Yep.
All right,
yep,
thank you.
Yep, thank you.
George Grundy?
Afternoon. My name is George F. Grundy II. I am from Flint, Michigan. I just rode the Indian Trails bus to get here, and I am going to tell my story of what I've dealt with when it comes to housing in the state of Michigan. I did 4.5 years in the Marine Corps. When I got out, I moved back to Michigan 2014. Later that year, the Flint water crisis happened. In between all that, I was in a program with an organization, I'm not gonna name them, a large organization, and it was a live-work program. So the home that I was working on getting, I would be living there and working out of there. With that, fast forward to this point, I wasn't able to get that home. They made approximately $400,000 plus a brand new truck from General Motors that they got off of my back for being a veteran and them using that as marketing towards all of the things that they were doing with their other work-live program homes. What I'll say is that I came up with the money that they said they wanted. I have relatives that helped me come up with some funds, and when we were in court, the director at the time told me directly to my face that they didn't want the money, they just wanted me out of the home. Now, while I was in that home, I started an organization called Veterans of Now. Veterans of Now served over 10,000 residents in the city of Flint since its inception of 2015. There was never anything illegal going on in the property. There were a lot of people being served. We had events that had thousands of people show up. Literally had every political person that was around during that time period come to me, ask me for pictures and all that stuff, from Lieutenant Governor Calley to Congressman Kildee to Tulsi Goldberg, to anytime there was anybody in the state that was running for president, people would call me up and stuff. But when it came down for me to be able to secure what I needed, I was left in the dust. Also, after that situation, I was looking for housing. And as I was looking for housing, I went into an apartment complex office, and it happened to be attached to someone else's apartment. So it was their living situation and the office. I walked in, there was a older or mature white woman that was startled because I walked in and she told me I was trespassing. So I got a trespassing charge and got put in jail because she was frightened to do her job. So I know a lot of this stuff causes people to have to go past their cognitive dissonance and really look at me as a person, and also get past the fatigue that I'm from Flint and that we had a lot of stuff going on. But it doesn't change the fact that I lived through these things. I've had to deal with these things, and I caught a bus to get here. So I'm not an island, but I use my situation of being an island to say, how would I get here if I was not to ask for a favor? What would I need to do in order to do this? So I came here on my own accord. I'd use all the resources I personally have to do this right here. Now, the story is very much longer than that, and me being a veteran, there's also some things about that. I had if you understand what Silver Star is in Battle Creek, I had a situation with the person that helped create that location to bring something like that to the city of Flint. But then I learned what politics were. So there's a lot of things that I'm preparing to put out based on what I've lived through, because even though I've been the system or the situation has tried to break me, I have not fallen. And I'm just letting you know that I'm not going to quit, and you might see me even more. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Smithers. Will Braylock. Sandra Wameo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sandra Wameo, and I grew up in Grand Rapids. I am from here. I went to elementary, junior high, and also Central High School. Now, I am a disabled 60-year-old woman. I currently am experiencing a housing discrimination. Now, I have moved back from Port Huron to Grand Rapids. I was gone from Grand Rapids for a very long time, and I returned to Grand Rapids 2 years ago. In that amount of time is I went ahead and rented a one-bedroom apartment. And I obtained that bedroom apartment from Dagger J Ministry. I was actually homeless for 3 years. I came here to live with my baby sister, and upon arriving 4 months later, she passed away of a drug overdose, fentanyl. So within 3 days of arriving, I went ahead and went down to Dagger J's shelter and went ahead and stayed in this shelter for up to 6 months. Now, in that time, I did go ahead and get that one-bedroom apartment. I rented the one-bedroom apartment through West Michigan Renter, and it's AKA for Boulder Ridge Apartments. Now, I leased that apartment on February the 16th of 2022 for a 12-month lease. Within 45 days, I received a call from West Michigan Renters, which is Boulder Ridge Apartment. The person that I spoke with was Stasha King. She stated that due to me coming from the shelter and also having Section 8, which is HUD, through HUD, and that is through the community, I forgot my train of thought, so please forgive me. That's through the Community Housing and Associates MISHDA Section 8. Now, a portion of that rent was very minimum due to me working and also receiving disability. So I had a small portion. I was not familiar with Section 8, so I went ahead and paid my full amount of security deposit. 45 days, I received a call stating that my lease, my 12-month lease for the rent amount was incorrect. It went from $850 per month to $950. I was then requested by Stasha King to go ahead and sign another lease. The second lease was dropped off to my apartment. Personally, I signed it, then returned it back to West Michigan Renters, and they signed their portion and then dropped off a copy to me. Now, moving forward on October the 13th of 2022, I was mailed a form stating that they want to demand for possession of non-payment of rent. When I called the office, I told them, I called the office and confirmed all the receipts and everything else, and then was told that there was incorrect balancing. Currently, I am still battling this issue with them. I am in a better position now. I went ahead and received communication from Community Housing Associates that They are refusing for me to move. I submitted that paperwork to them from the renter's office, and it was actually handwritten and mailed to me by the U.S. Post Office. No court date, no document number. This has been an ongoing issue for the last 2 years, and I'm had it. I am exhausted. I am seeking resources. If anybody can help me in this matter, it does continue. I want to thank you for everyone's listening, and that is my personal story today. Thank you.
Thank you. Dilla Scott. Becky Nespital. Excuse me. Vicky Sample.
My name is Vicky Sample. I'm a little bit nervous. I am deaf. Can you hear me? Oh. Like I said, I'm nervous. So can you hear me? Because if you can't, she'll speak for me. Okay. It's my first time I applied fair housing, and I apply application for fair housing. I need to address anyone that is disability to understand what does it apply for. There is different locations to go. Disability for deaf, blind, and hard of hearing. There are different ability to communicating and with understanding with the capability for the language with ASL English. The AC are not taking their time to work with that has no experience with, especially first time, and how it works. First time meeting, if you were qualified to come to large group, explaining and video show that the program is all about, and only 1 or maybe 3 deaf show up with the interpreter, still not understanding or not able to ask questions because of large group of hearing. I felt it should handle in proper way in separate group with disability to show they shouldn't be in different group of meeting because of video involving with a lot of information and need communication with understanding to stop and ask questions if needed. I need first-time person who never had experience. In my case, I had issue with AC telling me I was approved for waiting list and getting voucher. Next time I found out I was not qualified for a half voucher because of my income. I was totally confused, frustration. I had to find my right in communication, and I did go to meeting and had an interpreter, but still not satisfied with understanding what they're telling me. Also, they did offer or explaining there is other option, other agency depending on where you were want to live. Also, I didn't know that I can have voucher for housing. Also, I just found out that had opened for waiting list, which was back in March 2024. I was not aware of this. How I found out is trying to see if I'm still on waiting list and voucher and let them know that I'm not working. She told me it's too late that had only for waiting list. I was very upset, and I asked her where would any deaf group get that information. She said by news on radio and others. I feel that they should communicate with Deaf Hard of Hearing Service Agency, should be involved so they can share the information to anyone that needs to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will now take a 15-minute break, and we will be reconvene at 5:30. Thank you.